Now with roll call, Trustee Barnes? Present. Trustee Pizzotti?
Present.
Clerk Venegas?
Present.
Vice President Kirby Gonzalez? Present. And I too am present. Before we roll into public comments, I'd actually remiss last time, I'd like to do a land acknowledgement to, so if you will indulge me for a second. So Washington Unified School District acknowledges that Indigenous peoples and nations, including Patwin, Nisnun, oh my gosh, I apologize, Miwok, and Wintun peoples have stewarded through generations the lands and waterways of what we now know as West Sacramento. We honor and respect the enduring relationship that exists between these peoples and nations and this land. Thank you so much. So we are going to open it up for public comments on items that are not on the agenda. Are there any public comments on items that are not on the agenda?
Thus far, there has been 2 public comments submitted for request. They didn't specify the agenda item.
Can we ask, is it public comment on the agenda item or something that is not on the agenda item?
Sure, let me check with Mr. Iceberg first. Mr. Iceberg, is your comment pertinent to something on the agenda or not on the agenda?
Hi, good evening. It's on the agenda regarding the masking.
Sure, thank you. Give me 1 second. Hi, Candy, is your comment pertinent to the agenda item, may I ask?
I just said that it is regarding the agenda item. Yes, sorry, I didn't type it fast enough.
Oh, not a problem. Thank you. We'll be right with you.
We normally take comments on the agenda item after the agenda item is presented. So seeing that there are no public comments on things that are not on the agenda item, we will move on to item D, board governance, outdoor masking on K-12 campuses. Dr. Hildreth. Oh, and
And now, Dr.
Okay,
and now Dr. Hildreth.
thank you, President Wong, trustees. Yes, this evening we are here to discuss the possibility of either lifting or keeping outdoor masks. We wanted to bring this to the board's agenda for discussion, knowing that for the state, there has been a change in masking requirements, more so at this time, indoor masking requirements that do not impact our K-12 settings. However, we know that outdoor masking has been a recommendation from our Yolo County Public Health Officer that back in August, we had a discussion about added layers of protection. And so we are here this evening to discuss, looking at the information that we have all received to determine, do we want to continue with outdoor masking, or do we want to lift that? Knowing additionally that from CDPH, they are going to be having a meeting to discuss a timeline regarding lifting of indoor masking requirements on February 28th. So we will have an update for masking at a later date. So right now, the discussion is open for outdoor masking.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Hildreth. And we will be now be taking public comment on the item. But before then, let me read our disclaimer. Members of the public may address the board on the topics of our board agenda, in addition to topics that are under the jurisdiction of the board and are not on the agenda. Although the board by law may not take action at this meeting, under board policy, the board may limit the total time of public input on any topic to 20 minutes unless it chooses to waive the limit item for a particular item. Tonight, we will be limiting public comment to 20 minutes. Individual speakers may be provided up to 3 minutes to comment on any topic unless amended. Public comments consisting of individual charges, complaints, and derogatory remarks about any district employee are requested to be submitted in writing to the administration in accordance with the district's complaint procedures. As such, the board reminds the public that the district has existing board policy that allows the public to lodge a complaint against a district employee. This policy provides a comprehensive procedure for reviewing and responding to public complaints. The process provides a more thorough opportunity to be heard than is allowed under the open meeting law that governs this meeting. The board respects the rights of members of the public to speak regarding matters on the agenda and other matters within the jurisdiction of the board. However, it is important for members of the public to recognize that comments regarding students other than the speaker's own children made during a public board meeting may be legally actionable as a violation of student privacy. Both state and federal law prohibit the board and others from discussing confidential student information in open session. To this end, be advised that if you reference a student's name other than your own student, you will be out of order and your comments may not be protected by the privileges that protect public speech. You could be found liable for such comments in legal proceedings. Furthermore, it is important for the public to understand that negative or derogatory comments made against district employees or others, even those made in a public board meeting, may be actionable civil defamation. It looks like we have 5 live comments that will be able to meet the public comment period. So why don't we begin?
I'll start the 20-minute timer
Okay.
once the first person.
Yep. And then the 3-minute.
Okay, Mr. Ryan Iceberg, I have allowed you the ability to speak and you may begin.
Thank you. Good evening, trustees. Despite the fact that the scientific research is coalescing around the inadequacy of masking school kids, I know that for some, it remains a point of friction. However, what's important to note that for tonight is that WUSC's universal masking rule is out of alignment with recommendations from CDC, CDPH, the World Health Organization, and UNICEF, all whom say masking outdoors at school is unnecessary. However, instead of hearing more from me on the topic, my daughter Reagan has asked to address the board tonight.
Good evening. My name is Reagan Iceberg, and I am an 8th grader at Stonegate. I would like to begin by sharing some of my experiences and thoughts about the mask mandate for schools. At the beginning of the pandemic, you told us to shut down schools and learn virtually. We did it. We now know that shutting down schools put kids behind socially and academically. When schools reopened, you told us to wear masks because you said that's what was best. We did it. Studies now show that masks are ineffective and do not work the way we thought they would. There is also growing evidence that masks are playing a role in the increasing rates of anxiety, depression, and emotional distress in kids. I have witnessed this firsthand through friends and family. This past week, nearly a dozen states have dropped mask mandates, and almost all of them have dropped mask mandates for schools. The fact that we haven't done the same is absolutely ridiculous. We all know that California dropped mask mandates for adults indoors, but somehow students are still required to wear masks indoors and outdoors. Now, I'm a straight A student, and I still can't make sense out of that. You are the only elected officials that represent the interest of the school children. It's your job to advocate for students and speak out on our behalf. If you really want to do what's best for us, lift the mask mandate for schools. Thank you.
Trustees, this past weekend, we just watched more than 70,000 people cram inside SoFi Stadium, a venue defined as indoor by LA County regulations, to watch the Super Bowl. I have to tell you, I'm finding it very difficult as a parent to explain to my kids why governors, mayors, movie stars, and athletes all get to party unmasked at a Super Bowl, but every kid in California must wear a mask all day, every day at school. The time to return to normalcy is now. Should students desire to wear a mask in concern for their health and safety, they should be free to do so. Should teachers or administrators desire to wear a mask in concern for their safety, they should be free to do so. But it's time to stop forcing all students, our lowest at-risk group for COVID, to remain masked at schools, indoor and outdoors, but specifically tonight for outdoors. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Iceberg and Reagan. So next up I have is Miss Candy Santos.
Good evening. I would like to remind Washington Unified School District and parents that in education, we teach our students to be critical thinkers. I would ask that the district and parents use some critical thinking now. If you're going to think critically, you need to start by asking the right questions. We need to get rid of these mask mandates for our children immediately. Our children have been deprived of oxygen for 6 to 8 hours each day, 5 days a week, with little scientific basis to support such drastic measures. This has resulted in significant psychological, physiological, and emotional harm to our children while in your care. Children need to breathe freely. There is ample evidence for adverse effects of children wearing masks, and they should not be forced to wear them. 68% of more than 25,000 children participated in this study. Due to the high intake of carbon dioxide, children experience symptoms such as irritability, headache, difficulty concentrating, reluctance to go to school, malice, impaired learning, drowsiness, and fatigue. Prolonged masking in schools has also caused enormous harm to children's cognitive, social, and emotional development. Over the past year, data shows that referrals to speech and language therapists have increased by between 25 to 300%, depending on locale. Younger children have suffered a 25% cognitive decline due to a combination of prolonged isolation, antisocial distancing, and universal masking of faces. Mental health issues in our young children, such as anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts, have skyrocketed due to these restrictive measures. This catastrophe in both cognitive development and mental health is entirely man-made and due to the failings of adults, particularly those in leadership positions, such as our public health officials and school officials who opted to follow orders blindly. Our children have now been forced into masks for almost 2 years, while in many states throughout the entire world, school children have gone mask-free. Clearly, the science and public health is broken in the United States and in California particularly. This must end now. Our school community should respect each family's personal medical and safety decisions for themselves and for their children. And let's be clear, wearing a mask is a medical decision that should not be made by our government. Scientific literature shows that the risk of COVID to people under 20 is extremely small. The risk to children under 14 less than influenza seasonally. That's factual. That was stated in medical literature over a year ago. Survival rate for people under 20 is 99.997%. The average death from COVID is 80 years old. Half the deaths are over 65 years old. It's very dangerous to over 70 who have at least 4 other medical issues. Transmission is low. Children don't significantly spread the virus to adults. All data from all countries and states that didn't lock down, like Florida, show no outbreaks from schools that opened and students unmasked. Studies have been validated. Teachers have low risk. A child is safe to be around. In K through 12 schools, half the teachers are under 41. 92% are under 60. This is not a high.
Sorry, Ms. Santos, your 3 minutes were up. Hi, Ruth, you can unmute yourself and begin.
Thank you, Mario. Good evening. And thank you to the board and superintendent for the time and allowing me this opportunity to speak as a parent. Here is my ask. Please try and filter through all the noise that you have been hearing and will continue to hear, which predominantly comes from those in positions of wealth and power, those who believe that it is their right and their opinion that matters the most. And consider this, there are many in the room who are and continue to be underrepresented. When making the decision to unmask outdoors, think about them too. The students whose parents or guardians don't take them to regular office visits, doctor's visits, who are afraid of the vaccine for a myriad of reasons, who have and continue to struggle to register for testing or don't know how or where to get the vaccine. This is true for many of our non-English speaking families. I have yet to see a vaccination clinic advertised with leaflets in Farsi, printed or handed out for families that may not have Facebook or struggle with technology and are not on social media. Many of our parents and guardians may also struggle with uploading a vaccine card and navigate that process. All students should wear their masks to school, and they can leave them in the classroom when they leave for recess or lunch. They will all have the same option to take it off or leave it on. Everyone will look the same in terms of masking, and there will be no political arguments or fodder to deal with because everyone will be treated the same. They will also leave school masked, so everyone is the same and united. We are one Washington unified. As time progresses, we can discuss vaccine policies, potential mandates, and how, when we will document a vaccination status. but now is the time to take this first step. And it is a significant step towards normalcy. And in turn, we can treat each other and all of our students with dignity and respect, regardless of what their parents or guardians have chosen for them. I believe in all of you and your efforts in establishing a decision based on equity and fairness. I also believe in vaccines and science, and I look forward to future discussions relating to the next steps of our journey back to normalcy. And thank you for doing the hard work and making the hard decisions.
Thank you, Ruth. The next person I have up is Dr. Matt Caldwell.
Yes, hello, can you hear me? Am I unmuted? All
So we can.
right, good evening. Yes, I completely second the comments of Reagan Eisberg and her father. As I've spoken in our last meeting, I implore you to remove these mask mandates from our children. As health experts are finally starting to admit, and quoting Dr. Sisson on the county website announcement, she said, we must learn to live with COVID-19. It is endemic. If masks had been stopping the spread of the Omicron variant, it would not have spread through Israel, Japan, United States, highly vaccinated countries. Masks had been worn there religiously, especially in Japan. It's like, 90% effective, or on people use it, and it didn't stop the virus. Masks are not how you stop these things. It's health. Kids are not at risk from COVID-19. Regardless of whether you speak Farsi or Russian, you don't need a vaccine to be safe from this SARS virus. I don't see how we can, in good conscience, continue to tell our kids that they need to mask outside in the wind or inside, especially after the Super Bowls and the ones before that. That the hypocrisy is just rampant, and our kids are getting more cynical every day as they see the adults, the ones with power, tell the kids who don't have power that you must do this. We'll blow the whistle at you if you have the mask below your nose out at recess, like my kids have had experience to them, or while they're trying to run in PE. My son came home, upset. Like, this is ridiculous. The yard duties, the teachers, this is not their job. They're not policemen for the state. As Roseville just did, they made it optional, and they are on legal standing to do so. There was a lawsuit with the November 21st order from the San Diego Superior Court that said these recommendations by the state do not have any enforcement behind them. You don't have to actually take the kid off campus if they don't want to wear a mask. You just have to say it's optional, and I implore you to do so. Thank you.
Okay. I have next live comment up is Ms. Kenna Jansky.
Jay.
Kenna J. I'm sorry if I butchered your last name, Kenna. But Kenna, you are up and you can unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me now?
We can.
Sorry. Okay, good evening. Thank you for this meeting. Excuse any background noise. I'm at my daughter's basketball game, which has kind of changed the direction of what I wanted to speak at this phone call, because I'm watching these athletes run up and down a court with a mask. And mine was just pulled out to sit down because she's lightheaded, dizzy, and has a headache from wearing a mask for 3/4 of a basketball game. So my tone may change, and please know it is not directly you. It's with the impatience that all of this has put upon us. I wrote an email in today. Again, everyone here has all the statistics. Everyone knows what the California Department of Health has recommended, and now we are all aware that our county is not doing it. So if our state has recommendations and we have individual districts going rogue, you can see why we have such a fractured community with this. And I'm really urging you to please consider all of us calling in and all of this data and everything and for the well-being of our kids. And I think mostly I wanted to read something different tonight, because we're forgetting about the humanity and we're forgetting about what we have done with our children. So in the email today, I had something I wanted to include, and it says human faces into steel line from Walt Whitman contains multitudes. Whether it's the righteous joy embodied by an open mouth laugh or the subtle contempt of a curled lip, people of all ages rely on others' faces to help them navigate their social environments. Our expressions, whether we intend them or not, convey all manner of vital information. Those bashful smiles and pursed lips reveal quite about what we feel and offer guidance to others on how to best respond to us. This is especially the case if our words and expressions do not match. This is 2 years of this, and their social graces have disappeared. I've shared my profession, and I am now sharing my uttermost concern that within 2 weeks, Randy Weingartner said we needed to have a 50% vax rate, which trickled down to Newsom, which trickled down to Dr. Sisson, and please be aware that that is unattainable. So as you move forward, please consider all sources and everything presented tonight and make the best decision regarding our children and leave it optional. No one is going to judge you otherwise, but give them a choice because you've taken it away for the last 2 years. Thank you for all the hard work everybody on this meeting has done to keep these kids open. The schools open and everybody's safe. And I wish you well in this endeavor because you're going to be hearing a lot of concern both ways. Thank you.
All right, now that we have dispensed with live comments, I am going to begin to read the pre-submitted written comments. So,
There's 6.5 minutes left to meet the.
okay, so, all right, so I will, there's 6.5 minutes. There are 4 comments. Can you cut me down to two-minute reads
Per comment.
per comment? All right, so first one from Ms. Gail Costello. Yes, let young kids K-8 leave their masks face down on their desk when they go outside, and let high schoolers be on campus outside without a mask so they can see each other and get reacquainted and or play sports. The time is near when masks will not be needed at all. Children's risk of serious illness or death with Omicron is something like 0.08%. We all know people who are testing positive for Omicron with 0 symptoms. P.S. It can be done with understanding that should a new, much more lethal COVID variant arrive, masks could again be required everywhere. Young children need to see, read faces, young faces, old faces. Older students need to be able to smile to experience some joy. Number 2 from Mr. Jim Ramsey. In line with the current CDC guidelines, I support allowing students to choose whether or not to wear masks while outdoors. In doing so, it should be explicitly communicated to students that wearing or not wearing a mask outdoors is a personal choice. It should also be explicitly communicated that students shall not be called out, set apart, or ostracized in any way for continuing to wear a mask or choosing not to wear a mask. Written comment number 3, Tiffany Allgood. No mask outside for kids, it's time. Written comment number 4, Kurt Schmiegel. Now that the public knows that for a fact that healthy children under 18 are at the lowest risk of any population group for complications related to COVID, will the district be removing masks for the student population? It's also publicly known, as reported by Forbes, the New York Times, and the Atlantic, that masks, in fact, have negative impacts on child development, which includes poor socialization, speech development, and reading. Will the district be removing masks for student population? In the past, when public policy negatively impacted disproportionate amount of minorities versus white counterparts, it was called systemic racism. West Sac public schools are comprised of majority minority students, while private schools are majority white. Will the district be removing masks for the student population? And we are done with public comments. Did I make it under 6 minutes?
You did. There was 4.
Speed reader.
Okay. Now I'm turning it over to the board for discussion. Trustee Pizzotti?
Sure. So there's a couple of things that I heard that were actually, the public comments were factually inaccurate, that did bother me. It said there's cloth masks are only 50% effective at reducing the risk of transmission, while respirators like N95 or KN95 reduce the risk by 83%. So I would want to put that out there. It's not true that some masks or no masks are stopping the spread. Omicron is truly a very transmittable, and I've had personal experience with my niece bringing home COVID from her school and giving it to her parents. That's my concern. Is not necessarily for the kids, because my niece was fine. It's for what happens when the kid contracts something at school and brings it home to maybe a person who has an immunocompromised system. and what kind of danger that could impose. Also, the other thing that I've been weighing on is when we initially imposed our outdoor masking policy, our case rate was considerably lower than what it is right now. So effectively then, the only thing that changed is, well, vaccinations. Many more people have vaccinations. Many more people have gotten COVID, so there's some herd immunity. But the political appetite and will to say that this is something that is still very dangerous. And it is still very dangerous for some people, but not as dangerous as, say, the Delta variant. I watched Dr. Sison's video, the attachment that's on our agenda. And she was very clear when she said that fewer and fewer guidelines will be out there as we start moving into the more endemic phase of this current pandemic. And what she did say very clearly is more and more recommendations will be given. And we've pretty much always gone by what her recommendations were. But they were continually in line with CDPH and CDC. So what she did say was that she recommends removing masks if the population of students vaccinated are greater than 50%. I guess my question would be, why would we consider going against Dr. Sison's recommendations?
Other discussion? Trustee Barnes, you're giving me some eyes.
Well, I mean, I was just looking at you. I would consider going against a recommendation, given the fact that the kids are at very low risk. There is now data out showing that it's impacting them in a negative way. This masking that's clearly ineffective. There is no evidence for that 50% number. So I'm confused about why she said that. I'm sorry. I think the reasons that we just heard listed are very strong strong reasons to make it optional. And I really hope that as a community, because I think that's where we're headed anyway, not to mention the entire world is masking less. And I'm not exactly sure how having kids mask outdoors is going to stop the spread given what we do in our communities. It doesn't make sense. So they play together. I personally won't exercise in a gym because we have to wear masks. So I do it outside without a mask on, but that's really unfortunate for the rest of our community, for the kids that have to play sports in masks. And it doesn't bother some people, but it really bothers others. I am one that it really bothers. So yeah, personally, I am all for unmasking and making it an option outdoors. And then we'll reassess at the end of February for indoors. But yeah.
Yeah, so I'd like to thank everybody for their public comment. And know that the reason we're meeting on a Tuesday is because we care as a board, as a unified board to make that decision. So, I'm sure a superintendent could have just made a decision, but, just so that the community knows we're meeting on a Tuesday to have this discussion. We have always looked at the data, so that people know how we're making our choice is data-based, not our feeling of, because our feelings are going to change, right? Our perception is going to change based on what we're learning. And this was a recommendation. Obviously, the 50%, I'm a little bit confused about that as to why that was put out there, knowing that we know our community. And I'm all for, I'll just make it very clear, I'm all for lifting that outdoor masking and making it optional. I think that in itself will play with some of the percentages of how many students still feel the need, or parents still want their students to continue wearing masks. But I am all for allowing outdoor, no masks outdoor. And then as we move, through February, I believe February 28th or so, when that bridge comes, when that opportunity comes, I think that the community can trust that we will revisit that conversation, because we're moving. Again, we're leading, but we're also moving based on what we're learning. So I think that the community can build that trust in us to not to have to, even call a special board meeting just to have that conversation, that open dialogue, to be able to make the best decision possible for our students and our families. So all for lifting that outdoor masking policy.
Yeah, I think given our neighboring districts, counties, I should say, have had an optional mask policy throughout this time. And we have had some time to now see that the outdoor risks are very, very low. And those districts are not having issues with the outdoors. It's the indoor rainy recesses, or those are the times when we're dealing with the most challenge. So I am supportive of making outdoor masks optional, but I think we need to do a couple things. One is we need to start asking our families to do a big push for, if they have been vaccinated, to give us that data. So we can start knowing our numbers, because the truth is, I don't think today we really know our numbers. And then two, I thought the recommendation was important to get out information. Firstly, we know we have a very large influx of refugees in West Sacramento, and we need to be cognizant of all languages, really. But I think sometimes that paper is just really needed. So I think that was a good recommendation. I did volunteer, I think 6 periods of PE last Friday.
Oh, that's right.
And it's getting warm out there. And giving directions outdoors when there's recess to a group of 32 in a mask. That's challenging. So I'll just leave it at that. I felt like I was screaming all day so they could hear me, but I was. And I already talk loud, right? So I do think, though, that we have to be very careful of our students. I would appreciate if this is board direction, just giving my input now, if this goes through, that there is a clear statement to give to our educators to say to their classes before they go out, and to principals, because we are going to have students that are going to stay in their masks. We have students who, have diabetes. We have students who, I don't know if we have any students going through chemotherapy, but certainly they have parents who are, and other family members who are. And so, my girls, when we play with family who's going through some significant medical things, they do wear their masks outside together to play with them. So I just want to make sure that we are giving a message that it's optional, and the respect that comes with that for all of our students and what choices they make. And that whether they choose to have their mask on or off, that we're going off data that it is safe outside, because some of our students will need that reassurance and need it to be okay for them to make that decision for themselves and their family.
Thank you, everybody, for your perspective and direction. I think you have majority, right? But I will confer with my 3 colleagues that I think it is appropriate to make sure that the outdoor mask is optional. But the bullying is really top of mind either way. That is just something that we've been talking about, right? To make sure that the bullying is there. And, I will share that some of the things is that some of our students want to go unmasked, but they are they've been masked for so long, taking it off is scary too. Right, so the mental health and the anxiety behind that. So just be cognizant of what's happening on our campuses, whether it's not like that's, I appreciate that, Vice President Kirby Gonzalez. I don't know where the 50% came from because quite frankly, what we know is only 25% of school-age children statewide have had it, so it's a little scary to think what that vaccination number is. We also know that a lot of our students, whether or not they have told us now or we've caught them, they've actually also had the virus, which kind of, is part of that calculus. So I'm fascinated too to how we got to 50%. But optional, I think my children probably will still wear outdoors, by the way, but that's just who they are. Even though they're fully vaccinated by their own choice. And so that is my recommendation, since that's also the trend locally. And what struck me is that I went to an indoor basketball game. None of the players had their masks on. I went out on Saturday to pull weeds on the River City baseball. And then the softball girls had their masks on outdoors in the warm heat, which was like, that sucks, right? Like they're running and they're practicing softball and you're a softball player in the heat. So it just felt weird to see like a situation where I'm indoors watching a basketball game in River City. Stranger players are unmasked, playing with each other, up on each other. And here you are outside, softball, kind of far apart, masked. And it was stuffy. So there's other issues there. But anyways, that's the direction that I would provide. So I think you have four trustees who are leaning into optional masking.
Thank you for the discussion and especially for our community who has been very engaged. And we know that there are community members who are unable to join. And we want to make sure they know that the recording will be available for anyone who wants to view it. So the direction that I'm hearing from the board is that our district will be lifting the outdoor masking requirement based on what I have heard in terms of getting information out to staff, families, making sure that we are clear in our communication and giving opportunities to make sure there's no bullying and that all our students are feeling safe. I would recommend that this would be something that we would have to go into effect next week after return from the holiday. So we're off. And our students are not in school Thursday, Friday, or Monday. So we, just in terms of a communication strategy, knowing that it's a short week, we will need a couple of days to think about how the rollout would be. So I will meet with the team and then we will come back, send information to the board about a date next week, and then get that communication out. So I'm thinking early next week, maybe Wednesday or Thursday. We want to give ourselves a week, not including the 3 days we're not here, to be able to make sure that we have everything set up for success.
And tomorrow's a half day anyways.
Yeah.
Okay, I think it would be a lot easier. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I'm not a staff member working here, so I want to really honor what you're saying. But from a community standpoint, it seems like the day back is a clean time to start that.
Tuesday?
Yeah, because they come back on Tuesday. It seems like that's an easier time to start it, but I'm just thinking about our community who's hearing this message, telling their kids, and then they're coming back, and then it starts on a Wednesday or Thursday.
And then just with February 28th too.
Oh, yeah.
Like just
Yeah.
like how much,
Yeah.
maybe just not to add confusion, how to shorten that.
So I would say we'll strive for Tuesday,
Okay.
but again, knowing that it is a short week for staff,
Okay, that's.
district staff,
Okay.
to do the things that we want to make sure it's smooth. So hopefully our community who is listening understands that it is not a lack of urgency. We all understand the impacts, discussed and heard the rationale. But again, we want to make sure that it is a rollout where everyone is aware. We've talked about our families who might need that information in a different venue or in terms of language, just making sure it gets sent
Yeah, that makes sense.
to our Farsi speaking parents, our Spanish, our Russian, that we are going to have to get that communication to them. That's going to require our staff to do some translation on top of some of the things that they may have on their plate to be doing for the next 2 days.
Yes.
So just, I'm thinking more in terms of the workflow to make sure it is a positive rollout for our kids, because that's what we're focused on. So our timeline is to start Tuesday. If there's anything that would prevent that from happening, we would share that information with the trustees, get that communication. I don't see that happening, but I just want to communicate what the steps are so that the community understands, well, why can't you just do it tomorrow?
Sure.
I'm sure there are some who,
Well, parents are gonna tell their kids,
right, like, ooh,
and now,
the board's decision is going to happen.
well, that's gonna happen tomorrow. It's
It
gonna
doesn't
happen on
start
Tuesday.
tomorrow.
Right, so it will not,
Clear.
That's what I'm saying.
But I also think that if they do, also to alleviate some stress from our staff, who's like, so we should probably have a board brief out, like.
yes,
'Cause I don't want staff to then have
exactly.
a potential fight with a student who may not be.
Right, who will be excited,
I misunderstood.
excited about this
Yes, yes, yes.
news, but I think it's the same in terms of, we looked at the rollout from the governor that announced that it's coming last week, and then today or tomorrow was the date. So the same thing, it's coming, but next Tuesday is the official date. So we're asking our families and students to maintain the current wearing of the masks for tomorrow, which is a half day. And then there's 2 days for the rest of the week where they will not be in school, and including Monday. So by Tuesday, so if we think about from the kids' perspective, we're only asking them officially to wear the mask for a half day tomorrow.
Yeah, that's fair.
And they're still wearing it in class, so.
And they're still wearing them in class, and we will revisit what the next steps will be on after the 28th when we get that direction from the state.
My daughter thought she lost her special mask and freaked out. And then we found it. So she will be wearing her mask.
My daughter likes it at all times. She's like, it keeps my face warm.
That's what
In any
Lucy-
case,
You're just with me.
That's what Lucy says.
Does staff need any more direction or clarification, I should ask?
No,
Okay.
thank you.
If not, then the meeting is adjourned.